I'll revamp it. Hang on.
Point.
Let me just make sure it's connected.
It says
Let's
it's
see.
streaming.
Is it?
Mhm.
I always want to make sure. Let's see here. Why is Joe Biden coming up?
Oh, goodness
The
gracious.
universe is speaking to me.
Oh, really?
Okay, so ever since I reawoke, and welcome back everybody to an incredible show that's been going on for about 3 months with Gareth and Katie. And it's a lot of it's based on questions, and it's a big part of the show. And I feel like it really carries a Trinity energy because it takes into consideration those that are observing, because so much of our journey is to experience it and witness it. So I feel like it's all kind of coming to the same place. But anyway, I was telling Katie before you came on and before we went live that, ever since I reawoke, a big part of my communion, probably the biggest part, is walking. I just go walking. And it's like, a lot of people do sessions and lay down, and, but I do it with the walking. So I'm going through a lot of personal stuff. I came on and I said something to Katie, and she was like, I just want to get through what the fuck's going on.
I'm just
Something to
trying to
that
stay
effect.
alive. I'm just trying to stay alive.
And I said, you're not alone in many ways, both by the people that are experiencing the same thing you are and those that are around us that, let's just say, are in the non-physical. So I was going through my own interpretation of what she's feeling. And part of it was that I'm understanding that from the 9th through the 15th, those 7 days or whatever that uh, is the biggest window we've ever had. And this is as I'm coming out of this personal transmission about the things in my own life and how I just want to be alive. And so then it came in and it said, okay, tell that, say that. So in this 7 day period, which we're halfway through, for me, and I'm not saying it's a gospel truth, I'm just saying there's a window open here, like of never before seen proportions. It's not even close. And the second part of the transmission was to ask Gareth, have you ever considered connecting to the Arcturians or Tom et al. Live?
Oh,
Ooh,
channeling.
um, not so much Tom, God. Yeah, the Arcturians. Actually, I had an experience about, gosh, when was that? About a year and a half ago, where this presence came through me that was different, and it was like it was introducing itself, and I kind of came away from it going, I wonder if I'm going to end up channeling at some point. And yeah, look, I don't know if that's the
Were you
case.
were you on a live?
No, 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 no. This was just
That's
at
what I'm
home.
saying. That's what I specifically heard. And I don't know if it was the Arcturians because I've been seeing a lot of purple, violet, with the purples and the blues and the greens. I don't know if it's Arcturian. I know last week it was very obviously Syrian and Pleiadian. But as I was coming back and coming to turn the show on, like I said, I was coming out of my own personal kind of experience and transmission as Katie was and still holds in the expression of her face. Uh, but then I heard very clearly, ask him, have you ever considered connecting to the Arcturians, Tom et al. Life?
Not
And
as
I'm
conscious.
not trying to put you on the spot, but I really
No,
believe.
that's fine. Not as
No,
consciously as that
no, but I'm
perhaps.
just saying I really believe that everybody carries different frequencies. Everybody carries different skills and abilities, but I really feel like you have something that you have, um, kind of feeds the connection between, let's just say, the non-physical and the physical, or the human and the soul, or the human multi-dimensionality and the multi-dimensionality. I feel like that maybe it's something to consider. I'm not trying to put any pressure on you, but
Sure. Maybe it's, yeah, look, it could be where it leads. Absolutely. Oh, I'm very open. I'm open to that. Absolutely. Yeah.
mm,
I mean, they may, particularly the Arcturians, may just come to that point. I mean, they can speak to me and I can relay what they say.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
just thought with the format, the way it's gone, like the way Katie interjects and the way she asks questions, and the contrast of her really organic, human, no bullshit kind of, hey, this is how I feel. I know those words sound pretty that you're saying, Gareth, but give me a fucking break. And
yes, perfect.
somewhere in between there, I believe the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, the Elementals, the Galactics, the Angelics, Archangelics, all of them are with us. So anyway, I'm going to leave that with you, and I'm
Sure.
not trying to put any pressure on you, but man, it is such an honor and a privilege to facilitate this connection every week on this platform. And I just want to thank you both for what you're doing, because it's huge. It's really huge. And
Thanks. And look, thank you to you for giving us the opportunity. Yeah. Because we're
Yeah.
writing this in real time. We,
that's what I mean.
we, yeah, this is all.
You've given us a space to do this, and we
Mm.
wouldn't have I don't know. I mean, I've known Mark Atwood for a while, but I don't know that we would have gotten that interview so fluidly. It was so perfectly timed. And
It
he
was.
and all sorts of people watching us are fans of yours, Todd. Like that was just the that was just very exciting. It was so divinely ordained.
It's just a beginning. And so I think these things that come in the spontaneous, like even what I received in the transmission, not to put that on you, but I really feel like that's what is represented in the conversations you have. So that's why I find it very intriguing that you could have this very human Katie talking to the conduit that Gareth is, whatever voices come through. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to
Thanks.
watching this. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Todd.
Thanks, Todd. And yeah, hi everyone. Hi, Katie. Look, you're so vulnerable. That's beautiful and perfect. Yeah, just let it be there. Let it go, let it be there. It's been hard on you, hasn't it?
Everybody, everybody I talked to today.
Yeah, it's been hard on all of us. Kind of like you're feeling like you've been holding the weight of the world. That's kind of true. All of us.
Yeah,
The load's about to spread out.
about to. That reminds me of Jonathan Rumi in the show The Chosen. He has a joke with the disciples. They're like, but when? And Jonathan Rumi playing, the Nazarene, of course, says soon. So it's a joke through like all the series, all the seasons. Soon. What does soon mean? The form and timing of the human is making this like soon feel like a million miles away.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like our conversations, doesn't it? But there's a
Yeah,
reason for it. I know it's tough, but there's a reason for it because it is the problem's unknown and there's a lot of disinformation embedded in us throughout our lives that gap burns up. The emotional energy that's trapped in the past that's how it gets burnt up because the weight of the reactionaryism is fueled by that unresolved energy. But when you let yourself recognize you've got a problem, you don't know what it is, and you don't know what to do, but here you are. There's a gap where there wasn't one before. And the first thing that happens is all that emotional energy. You go and get lit up by You come across something, you know it's true, of how to see this clearly. And then a week later, you're back where you were. But it feels like you've got nowhere. But what's actually happening is you've released that moment is about releasing a part of you in the past that hasn't been resolved because that resolves it.
Right.
So
But
the spark,
that part of us in the past, it's subconscious. It's like we don't even know what it is. So like I couldn't go looking for it to help it if I tried. Like this is none of this is an act of will. I didn't say, I'm gonna wake up in 2021. I didn't say 20 minutes ago, I'm gonna get on the call and I'm gonna start bawling, seeing everyone's comments going through this. Like I can't, there's no planning anymore. Nothing works anymore.
what do you plan when you got an unknown quantity? How do you plan for it? And
Yeah.
that's what drives the entire inversion of reality that we're living through, that fear of the unknown. And it's like Ramana Maharshi said, the only way to know that fear isn't real is to let it come and get you. And this is what that looks like, the unknown. To be held in that, it's like a fire. It
It
feels
looks
intense.
like ugly crying. It looks like ugly crying.
By the way, sorry, this is a total left of field. Is my audio okay? Because I've just played around with the mic.
How about mine? Mine was messed
Really?
up on with Mark Atwood, but now it's fine.
Yeah,
I don't
those mics.
understand that.
Well, the mic bumping against your,
Oh,
that's why, that's what that
the
was.
ones that I wore on that, they were, oh, yeah, yeah. But
The
even when I
mics,
held it away from me, it was wonky.
yeah, because that sound can carry down the wire to the mic. Yeah, I think we get a different mic. A lapel mic can work.
Yeah, yeah. I've been
There's-
talking to Shure, Shure, yeah, about a boom. Yeah,
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 boom
yeah,
mics are good. Boom mics are good. They're very directional, but you can put them on a stand and have them sitting
yeah.
somewhere.
They
It'll
showed
just pick
me
up
like,
you and not the background.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm looking at a thing to keep doing this stuff.
Sweetwater are
Um,
good. You can talk to a person there, and they know they've got a great sort of podcasting online streaming department where they've got all the gear and they know how to fit your need with the right. I'm a musician, if anyone didn't know. I've been
yeah.
using them for years, and they're great. They're great. They're really good.
Todd and Mike and Wi-Fi N3F said it's all good. We sound good.
Good. Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to check
Yep.
these things because it can be a problem because it's hard enough to hear this stuff without having to hear through static and crap.
Ah, it
So what a
just
week, huh?
what a day.
What a 5 minutes.
What a 5 minutes. It's like one of my friends just was going on an incredible rant against God today. And she knows better. It's not she's just so in it. She sent me a Dolores Cannon reel and she's like, I can hear what she's saying about coming here without memory, but why would we do that? Like, why would we fractalize to come here to forget the wonderful things we know? And like, why can't God learn this stuff by himself? And I'm like, well, it kind of is. We're all one thing. Like, I mean, I'm not making fun of her. I totally felt her questions. I totally understood her pain. I'd never heard or read anything like that from her before. I mean, I could read some of it. I mean, if you were interested.
Yeah, sure,
It
go ahead.
was
Yeah. I mean, I've read it, I think, the one that you're talking about, but let's put it out there. Absolutely, yeah.
it,
Because
it's
you're probably
like
speaking for a lot of people.
she basically said, I love Dolores. I understand what she's saying, but I still think it's dumb and I don't want to participate any longer. She said if it's like a video game, I don't play video games. Maybe that's why I just don't like it, nor do I get it. Um, and she just it's on Instagram, so it'll take me. But talk about that for a minute while I look up more of what she said, because it was so many people's thoughts, and I wanted to share it and honor the way she's feeling. But I want you to talk about that coming in here to play these parts without our memories, except for a few who have pre-birth memories, like Christian Sundberg. Like he remembers like conception. He has memories of pre-birth and choosing this and choosing one and then backing out of it in the last minute and then choosing another one and like causing the mother that he came into great distress, like in 2014 with me losing the baby, like these lessons. The truth of who we are is not affected, but it sucks.
I know. Okay, yeah, well, let's go there because that's important. Well, first of all, just regarding her, no, she knows better, but she had to get it off her chest thing.
Yeah.
One thing God said to me is, your motivation is your protection in all things. So while it might look like one thing, it's actually important to do that. When Ramana Maharshi said something, when you argue with what is, you suffer. Now that's true of what's out there. And if this is a big trap in spirituality, we think we've got to love and light it away. And that doesn't work. So part of arguing with what is you suffer is the fact that you feel the opposite way. So that's got to, because remember, self-doubt and fear of the unknown is we feel bad about ourselves for being the way we are, and that just amplifies it. So that has to be brought up. And so she's put it out there so that she can look at it. It's just the context is missing, and that's really that's really the thing we're all looking for. How can we see all of this in a new way that works? Because we're over the old way because it doesn't work. Is effectively what is underneath that. And there is a context to put around it. And God said to me, what's going on right now? And this is important to get. He said, we are reversing the inversion with you. We are bringing you back across the valley you should not have crossed. Now, what does that mean? Firstly, you've got to know this sense of reality. We've got an inversion of reality. He also said to the answer, well, what's the biggest problem facing us in all of this? The ego that controls and lack of a belief in an absolute reality. That this inversion is not the absolute, it's not natural. It's not that firstly, reality has a natural state. We have a natural state that this group, let's call them those of the interference. I use that term because that's the term God used. So let's not argue semantics. Let's just use it. Those of the interference. And by the way, anyone who doesn't know there's a they with an agenda by now needs to take a seriously good hard look at themselves. That's precisely what's coming. We can leave that up to them. We already know that. My wife's just saying goodbye through the window. My twin flame.
Love that.
Yeah, so let's start. That's the ground that we stand on. We're living in an inverse reality. Now, when he said we are reversing the inversion with you, two things about that, because he always says things in a way that's open. So with our help together, co-creating this we could co-creating with the source of the universe, putting everything back around the right way. Because we've asked the question, what's the truth? Just like your friend did. That's essentially all she's doing. She's trying to figure out what reality is. And all she's got is what she's got to work with.
Yeah.
But he recognizes that she's got a question, not an opinion. But you've got to get that out there. But the thing with reversing the inversion with our sense of self, because that's the mother of the entire problem. We think we are
Our story.
the problem. Yes, we think we are our story.
Right.
We aren't. That sense you've got of who you are isn't who you are. Now, you can hear that, but it's not an act of will. That's a doorway. It opens up a doorway to something that part of you doesn't want to go to, the ego that controls. The whole thing is based on fear of going there in case it's true, in case what you're afraid of is real. So it's based on an assumption that you aren't worthy of meeting life, you don't have what it takes, and that there's some problem out there that you've got to be afraid of. But we've never looked at it we've never really gone back and gone, hang on a minute, is that really true? Like maybe that's the problem. I think there's a problem. Now, how do you deal with that? That's tough because everywhere you look, the only point of view you've ever had consciously is this point of view. So what's the alternative? We've never had a direct experience of it. All we've experienced is this problem. And the fact is, we've tried to get away from the person we doubt and be someone that's sure. Who knows? Oh, now I get it. Now I know. But that's really just about managing fear. So the more we act on that fear, the more real we make it. And that's the big problem. We've got to turn around and face the problem. First thing we're going to see is all the things we thought we knew, all the problems. So that's why we're all in this position. Everywhere we look, it looks dark because we've been trained to be external. So it looks like, so we come to all sorts of opinions about what the problem is. And you can see that playing out in the alternative community, the online community right now. But take away the full stops and put a question mark there. Is that really true? That's tough to do when you're angry as hell.
Or
That's tough to do.
hurting, or
Or
hurting.
hurting. Yeah. But
Like every, go on.
the key thing with satsang is why the Arcturians described it as true north. What do you need when you're lost out there in the forest? A map and a compass. Well, what is the map and the compass? The compass is the four pillars of the transition, simply because they're four modalities that can help us deal with this process. So we are reversing the inversion with you. That means we think we're going the right way through life. Otherwise, in other words, it's all physical. So get everything right out there, and then we'll be able to stop and relax. And of course, we never get there. That's why we've all dropped. That's why we've all dropped the ball. We've done everything, and still we've got the same problem. So clearly, our MO isn't working. But what's the alternative? So we've hit the wall. Basically, we've gone out there. We've gone from pure being to being doing. It's all about what you do to get right, to be someone who is worthy of love and respect. But of course, you carry with you the feeling you're not. And nothing, as long as you keep doing that, you're reinforcing it as true. So it doesn't matter what you do, you've just made it more and more real. And everything gets more and more empty. I mean, Abu Dhabi, I think it's in Saudi Arabia, there's a beach full of Ferraris and Lamborghinis that all the rich people, they buy them toys to distract themselves and they get bored. So they dump them and get something else. And
I even fall prey to that, so to speak. I mean, just buying something for the dopamine hit, or like maybe this tool or that supplement or this tincture will help this, and nothing
it
touches
might,
it.
yeah, it kind of distracts you from it for a while, which feels like yay, and then now the problem with that is the more you do it, the more hollow it gets until you run out of road. Because the thing is, this way of being is what Ramana called a state of mind. It's a way of thinking. It's a mental construct that we aren't right as we are, and life is something we've got to be wary of. So therefore, we better put it all together and control it so we can get somewhere that's safe. That's a belief system essentially. So it's a mind, it's a mental construct, a state of mind. Fear is a state of mind. They're not emotions. Fear, insecurity, etc. They're thoughts. They're products of this mental construct. So we create the problem we're trying to avoid by thinking about everything the same way. Now, Satsang, he said, just stop believing the mind. So when you argue with what is you suffer, the fact is you've got this feeling that you've been running from so long you don't even know what it is yet. All you know is you step into situations that trigger you. And you've always handled that a particular way, and now you run out of road. It doesn't work. How about we try something else? How about we let the feeling be there? We let the mind spin its wheels all over the feeling to justify its position without believing it. How about we challenge the story? Instead of doubting ourselves, let's
But
doubt the story. Maybe it's not true.
but
That's what you held.
I've been letting the feeling be there and the mind spin for years.
Mhm.
And it's almost like it gets louder and I get
Mhm.
clumsier. And I go backwards with, bad habits or whatever. Like, I just,
Groundhog
I'm
Day is a good way
so,
of putting
it's
it.
Groundhog Day. I'm so tired.
Right now, let's look at that. Because I went through this. I've been going through this all my life. So for 25 years, I was going through this completely alone. And it felt at times like I was getting nowhere. And it was really intense. So I've had the same issue. And the Arcturians showed me a spiral. They said, you are not moving in circles, you are moving in a spiral. Now, what happens? See, what's the real problem we've got? We've fractured, divide and conquer. That's the MO of those of the interference. Well, there's lots of expressions of that. But the core one is we separate from ourselves. Now, the problem with that is, like the absolute reality, you are who you are and life is what it is. But your mind has the capacity to pull you out of that reality. Now, what that does is you go through experience after experience where you can't resolve it. That has to be resolved. But you haven't got the mental capacity to do that yet, so it stays there, waiting until you do. Now, experience after experience throughout your childhood, adolescence, through adulthood, everything you do. So you've got these packets of yourself, your consciousness locked in the past. Now, you might hear some of the things I've said, for instance, some of the things you've heard a lot of people say, you go, wow, that's true. Your heart goes, yes, and your mind
Yeah.
agrees.
Yeah, you get
Then
all excited. You can
you get it.
hear it.
It feels like you forget it, doesn't it? And you're
Yeah.
right back, well, that's not actually what's happening. What's happening is you've met a layer of the truth and it's pulled a part of this stuck energy. It's released it. That's opened a doorway to the previous decade, let's say, where a similar pattern is. There's a part of you that doesn't know that yet, essentially, from the past. That's allowed up to the consciousness. So you keep on applying it. You keep feeling the feeling again. You keep thinking, see, defeatism is one of the parts of the control narrative. It's one of the core elements. Oh, well, what can you do? That's life. Oh, well, what can you do? That's human nature. No, it isn't. God said deliberately, you insist you have a human nature. So that's what the mind keeps doing. Remember, the ego that controls wants to stay in control, and this truth threatens its existence. Ego death. So you keep on dying, 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 dying. But what you're moving in a spiral. The deepening spiral, there are two versions of the spiral, the emotional body and the mental body. So the emotional body deepens. You go back in time. So there's less of you invested in that. You don't feel it, you don't see it that way. You're not conscious of it like this, but slowly, gradually, there's less emotional energy in the pattern that's holding you to this belief system that says you're fundamentally flawed. Humans are fundamentally flawed. Hey, we're doing the best we can, but what can you do? We're also flawed. Oh well, what can you do? We need daddy control system to keep us in line. That's how they justify their existence. This group, those of the interference, the control system around us. But what it does is it keeps us stuck in that. So getting free of this that's playing out there starts with getting free of it here. So the key is emotional intelligence and the ability to discern, not react. That's the mental side, the sacred masculine, divine feminine, sacred masculine. The reason emotional intelligence is so important is because it's the part that you can stay in this intense feeling and wait for the real answer. That takes energy. It takes a lot out of you. Because again, you're going around in circles, it feels like. But then you get a breakthrough because you're dropping, deepening, deepening. There's less of you invested in the story. There's more of you available to watch while this process plays out. There's critical points in that where the ego that controls feels it's losing its grip. The analogy in the Matrix movies is the agents, conditioning. So it'll come back harder. So you go
Oh,
through these periods
yes.
simpler, and then you go through these periods where it gets really hard. You get back into addictions. It can look like that. It's like you get angry. You fall into these patterns that you thought you were free of, and oh my God, here we are again. What's really happening is you're at a real key point where the ego it controls is losing its grip in a big way. Then you drop down again and down again and down again. But at the same time, because there's less of you invested in the story, because you're willing to question the story itself, not just believe it wholesale, which looks like you're not just going to believe the mainstream media's sell job of what's going on either. Tough because you haven't got a replacement for it. You've just got a gap where the opinion used to be. Now you've got a question, and that's hard to hold because everything in us is about being right so that we
Being
can
right, having the answer, be the one who
so
knows. I can't listen to people who have to be the one who knows.
judgment.
That is
That's
just
all based on self-judgment that you are wrong.
mm,
Our judgment creates reactionaryism. Discernment lets all of that be there and watches the whole thing as well. Now that's the spiral up. Slowly your mind gets more capable of holding all of this crap and being objective. Being subjective, being reactionary, getting played like a puppet by the media, because that's what they do. They program us with predictive programming through the media, and then they create a problem that triggers the programming so that we react, so that they can bring in a problem, because it all has to happen via free will. So our mental body starts to rise higher and higher above the problem. The higher you are, the more you can see. So two things are critical to come back to the truth of who you are. The sacred masculine operates around pattern recognition. You can start to see the difference between the baby and the bathwater in the control narrative. There's more consciousness available. There's less of you stuck in the past. What Ramana said, being fully present in the living moment. We're stuck in the past, so we're not actually seeing what's here in front of us. We're seeing
we're
this.
seeing it through a veil. We're seeing it through our
Yeah.
experiences
We're defining it from
and
this.
not as it truly is. Sorry, go on.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's why Ramana said you can't let it go. All you can do is be willing to see it and it will let you go. And that's what's happening. So I know it feels like you're stuck and getting nowhere and you've got no answers to this massive question, which is really important because you're talking about an existential crisis. Who am I really and where am I really? Because I feel like I'm dying. And the only way to know death isn't real is to let it come and get you. Change. See, what they want us to do, what this whole thing is designed to do is stop us moving with change. And this is the biggest change in the history of the human race. But change is a fundamental law of nature. The way the universe
Right.
works, there's this principle of the absolute constant. There's a constant, which is the sum total energy contained within the universe never changes. What does change, though, is the form. The form it takes never stays the same. So to stay stuck in a form out of fear, you're going against life. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the problem. That's why you feel the way you do. You can't do that and be connected to life. So you lose your connection to life. You feel like you've got.
Totally.
How do you get it back? Move with change. How do you do that? Let go of control. Stop telling every change that comes to you that it shouldn't be happening. Now, some shouldn't, some should. However, how do you know the difference? Be willing to make a mistake. So what? Oh, I thought that was the right choice. And it turns out now you know better. So pattern recognition, you start to see after a while, this is the whole process of enlightenment, which, by the way, enlightenment ain't no big deal. It's the natural state. Spirituality makes it into this big deal. So it's over there somewhere. No, it isn't. It's the natural state. The, the Nazarene came 3 times. The hawk, who actually oversaw the genetic seeding of
Seeding.
planet Earth, the
Right.
creation of this planet and the human race for a very specific purpose, and set up civilization, which is the sacred masculine in service to the divine feminine, which is it's a reflection of how we are, how all self-aware life is. That's why it works. The inversion of civilization is what we're living in. He came about 400 years before the Nazarene as the Buddha, which is what? The ultimate, someone who has all there is in life, Prince Siddhartha. I mean, who can have more? He had everything, all of it. So what? He hit the wall anyway, and he became the Buddha. Let it all go. And then he came as the Nazarene. So that represents the valley we should not have crossed, the truth of who we are and the valley of the mind. We get lost in all this belief system. How do you get out of it? Let go of control and let life take you. That's the fundamental basis of Buddhism. It's not about
Yeah,
religion.
it's no, it's not about religion. It's funny talking about what is it, Prince Siddhartha?
Siddhartha.
The- Like so many awakened people basically want to get rid of everything. Not that they all do, some of them do, but like they no longer care about the physical things around them. They have some sort of eternal or cosmic, galactic understanding that they can't always put words to, where the things we own are clutter, they're energetic weight. Like I need some serious feng shui. But like I've, since the awakening, got truckloads out of here, but like I couldn't understand. I spent all my life consuming and being in the system to consume more. The more you have, the better you're doing, all of that nonsense. And the past, 3 to 6 years, the less I have, the happier I am. Like they all made that joke of Klaus Schwab, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And I'm like, yeah, dude, exactly. Like they made it this horrible thing, but to me that sounded heavenly. And yet I'm still consuming to find some sort of comfort. And I don't understand why I'm doing that. Like, am I still hooked in this? I don't I don't know what I'm doing. I'm walking around just constantly making mistakes and
But
not
you're not arguing with it.
understanding.
You're not arguing with that. That's the truth. You don't know what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. So you're not. How do you get to the truth of knowing who you are and where you are? By admitting that you don't know that yet.
And I want
And
help. I sometimes feel
mm,
like so alone. Like
mm,
I had it out with my son today and it just set me spiraling, and I remember one of the things I said to him, like what I wanted, like my mother and I were blessed, okay? Don't get me wrong, but we don't have anybody to help with anything. If we want anything done, it's do it yourself or pay for it. And I know we're very blessed to pay for it, right? That's not it. It's like I don't know what I'm saying. I'm just feeling all the things. Like
it
I
doesn't matter, does it? You still feel this way. Mm. So
yeah.
there's something missing. Emotional connection to self and life and other.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Mm.
then I go around like angry at my mother for no good reason, or maybe there's a reason, whatever. We've gone through this for years. You and I have gone through this for years, but I have such rage in me.
Mm.
And I'm just not an angry person, but I have so much rage.
Yes. I know, I understand. And that's that you need to let that be there. Because what stops us thinking that that's wrong? Especially spirituality. We think spirituality is about getting rid of that. And all we need
Yeah.
to know is that, oh, it's all love, it's all good. Now, I mean, look, yes, you can say that. That's the truth. But you've got to be authentic about how you get there. And the fact is, you can't go around this stuff. You've got to go through it. The negativity, the darkness, the self-judgment, the anger, pain of separation. There's lots of versions of anger, but the one that relates to this is it's the pain of separation expressed. Family system constellation work, which came in through Bert Hellinger, is a really good way to address this because quite often the reason we're at this feeling with the family, particularly our parents, is because we've been made responsible for something that's theirs, not ours. And that
But
pulls
then
us out of purpose.
does that go back to they've been made responsible for
Hmm,
something that was their parents, not theirs?
absolutely.
Like,
That's the
yeah,
meaning
yeah.
behind the sins of the father are visited on the son. Generation. Now, what is when that, a lot of people, this whole thing about gender neutrality to get away from men are better. That's not what it means. When God speaks about the sins of the father are visited on the son, he's talking about the masculine principle isolated from the feminine, in other words, out of balance. So the distortion in the belief system that's coming that the parent has been conditioned with because of their ignorance of that, they think it's who they are and what reality is. Then they program their children in along the same lines. And quite often, the anger and emotional reactionaryism that's created within them is taken out on the children. There's a lot of programming in us about being a parent and being a partner that isn't triggered until we're a parent and a partner. We think, we can, as we're 20s, oh, I won't be anything like my dad. And then suddenly we realize, suddenly we look back and we think, oh my God, victims become perpetrators.
Right.
The deep state know that.
And
That's
that's
the
what
whole
we're
principle.
stopping. And that's what
That's
we're
what mind
stopping.
controls. That's what mind
Because
control's about.
I've talked to you endlessly about my relationship with my mom and my anger. And, it's not her really that I'm angry at, right? We know this. I was talking to my girlfriend just yesterday, I think, who knows my mom very well. And she had seen my mom recently, and she said, she's so cute. And I said, my mom? And she said, she's just a scared little girl. And
Precisely.
I was like, and I tried to do that, just like in my mind's eye, see her as a scared little girl to take away my rage at her not coming to my defense. Like it's like who came to her defense. So she didn't know how to do, like it goes in circles, but victim perpetrator. And it stops with us. Everyone on this call, it stops with us.
Mhm. And what does that mean? I mean, firstly, you've got to let yourself be angry at her because victim perpetrator exists. She did something to you that hurt you, and she has a responsibility to own that. And that has had an effect on you. So that's a layer, but at the same time, they want us to hate each other, to be angry at each other, to blame
Yes.
each other. That's what they want. What God called the bottlenecking of souls. We stuck. Because remember, what's the MO? They're looking for a way to make the transition with us. What's the best way to do that? Keep us stuck in a holding pattern over here somewhere while they go, okay, now what's the best way to do this? And that's how they do it. This thing called karma, where we act out from this distortion, trying to make the world around us pay. That we call justice. People out in the street, they deserve to be yelled at by us because they're the problem. And we don't actually
Right.
see ourselves in each other. That's why in COVID, the Arcturian said to me, say to yourself, love and light, brother, sister, you are not the enemy,
Mhm.
which leaves room for this third party.
Right. Right.
There's this cause behind this that has nothing to do with the person who's triggering me that I'm angry at. Now I'm triggered and I'm angry. Now, what do I do with that? And that's where the four pillars of the transition come in. Again, that's where satsang plays a really important part, the path of self-inquiry. Who am I in all of this? And she's a reflection of you. So
Yeah.
we're all a reflection of each other. The you that the version of your mum you're seeing right now is a reflection of that scared little girl that you were. You don't have to be the same version of it as her, but you were hit by this controlled narrative impact in the same way she has, and you understand what that does to people. Now, again, you've got to get there authentically. You can't will yourself to be there. You can hear those words, you know they're true, and you've still got layers of parts of Katie that have to have their day in the sun. But the context is there now. You're not going to keep it going by acting off it like it's true. You've got to
Right.
let the feeling be there, and you've got to be angry, like your friend about God.
Right.
And you've got this third, but your attention is also on this middle ground. There's something else going on here, and I'm not quite sure what it is. That stops you from just acting out. Even if you do act out, you've got this place to come back to. Yeah, but what's the truth? And you keep applying the precepts that you learn within the four pillars. And they become more
I hope
real
I
and
do.
release more layers of the past until one day you just go, now I get it. You can't control when that happens. You just got to. He said to me, life is art. Now, what does that mean? If you're going to paint a picture, you can't will yourself to be inspired. You're like, okay, what am I going to do? You've got to be available for inspiration. It comes and finds you, and it happens when it happens. And then you act from the inspiration. That's what life's about. So we need these pauses to get clear what we're seeing and how we need to respond to it. which is the sacred masculine, discerning. Your heart says, stop and wait until you feel like, yes, I need to step this way. And your mind's job is to discern the right way to go about acting on it. So, for instance, painting a picture, your mind's job is to learn the structures about how to hold a paintbrush, how to mix colors together, how to be ready for that inspiration. And gradually you get better at it, better at it, better at it. That's all the mind's about, making
Mm.
sure you've got the ability to act on it when the time comes. And your heart's job is to tell the mind when that is. And the mind's job is to hear it. So that's the value of the mind, getting the ego and the heart connection, our intuition back around in the right way. The
Yeah.
ego is the servant. The masculine principle is the servant of the feminine principle. That's how the energy moves in the universe. Everything, all biological life throughout the universe starts female in utero, and then at a
Right.
certain point, there's a mutation that occurs that creates the masculine. In other words, it's secondary. Eve wasn't created by Adam's rib. That's just an analogy, by the way. The whole Garden of Eden thing. It's a lot of baby in bathwater in that, but it's the other way around. So when he says we are reversing the inversion with you, we've got everything upside down.
Wow. It's the other way around.
The other way around. But we have to experience that directly, which means we have to directly experience all of the inversion we've lived through with that spirit, that it's an inversion. It's not what I thought. That's tough to do. Tough to do, yeah. Believe me, I know from personal experience. It's tough to be really angry at someone
It's
and be justified and allow room to hit the pause button. You're not the problem. To stay in the fire, the heat of that without acting out. Whew. But it does something amazingly powerful over time. That's why soon, stay with it. Soon, stay with it. Stay with it. When you'll make it. The reason this is true, I can tell you why. The answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. I can tell you that until the cows come home. But if you're not ready to hear it, you won't. But the process of knowing that there's a reason why that's the answer you can't see yet is what gets rid of everything in the way.
I want that so much.
That's all you need. You want the truth over all the sacred cows in your belief system.
Yeah. Yeah. The sacred cows of my belief system can go fly over the moon.
Fuck
I
yeah.
just
You just don't
want
know
the
what they are.
truth. I don't know what they are. And
Yet.
I'm like, years long this is. But then, time isn't real and like all of that, like mumbo
Yeah,
jumbo. And I
but
know
it
it's
feels
not
real.
mumbo jumbo. What? It feels
It
real.
feels real. And you got to admit
It
that.
it feels long and drawn out and
Eternal.
unnecessarily painful. Like I think that's another friend of mine actually on the call tonight was just like, why so painful? Why like I just it's so much. It's so heavy. I, I don't know. And
No.
my response was like, why is God doing this to us? I'm like, it's not punitive.
And
It's
that needs
not
to be,
punitive.
it
It's
needs to,
for
that's
us.
a real good one. Why is God doing that to us? Now that's a story. Maybe okay, that's how I see it, and I don't know any other way to see it, but maybe I'm not quite, maybe that's not accurate. Now again, that's tough. Every, what are the three? Okay, so this group, those are the interference. They've infiltrated our civilization and they've divided us from each other to keep us stuck. How do they do that? The MO, take control of the narrative, generate problem, reaction, solution through that control. In other words, control their perception of reality through controlling the flow of information. Only give them part of the story so they think they've got to decide from A and B. And that creates a distortion that creates reactionaryism. So problem, we'll embed them with reactionaryism so they can't stop and think really what the solution is. And then we'll give them our solution. They think they're choosing by free will from their own sovereignty, the solution.
Yes.
And what is the solution? Centralization of power, totalitarianism, slavery. And we choose it. Now that's the thing. As painful it is, the Arcturians showed it to me. This spiral, the emotional body deepening and deepening and deepening. One day I was really struggling with just being myself. Isn't that what we're all struggling with? Being vulnerable to be ourselves. Now I'm born into a particular lineage that's you can't talk about. The church has done a bloody good job of making sure no one can compare themselves to the Nazarene. But that's the whole point of why he came. This is who you are when you're not messed with. This is what you are. So of course they're going to come in and say, no, you're not. Let's do everything we can to spin a story around that that makes sure no one can access the reality of why he came and who he was and what they, because if they connect with that, we're done. Of course they're going to spin a lie about it.
I
So they
think
create this myth called the Catholic Church, right? So what do? We throw the baby out with the bathwater. Religion is the opiate of the masses, therefore there's no God. Huh?
religion is the what of the masses?
That's the basis of communism. The religion is the opiate of the masses. Stalin and
Opiate, opiate. That was the word I was looking for.
opiate
Okay.
drug. It's a way to
Yep, yep.
yeah. And look, they're right. But religion's got nothing to do with God. He said to me directly, "The time for religion is over. We do not need your worship. They do." In ritual, love becomes redundant. We
So
react to
what does that mean? In ritual,
ritual.
love becomes redundant. So the ritual, the pushed rituals and expectations and rules and rigidity of religion, love becomes redundant. It becomes
Makes-
not what love actually is at all.
No, we're not
Okay.
loving towards each other because we're
No.
wrong. Oh, you're not believing in God the right way, so therefore I'll kill you.
Right.
But also it means the habits of reactionaryism embedded within our belief system. We're not operating from love, we're operating from a habit, a
Yeah.
ritual. It's another way of saying ritual. Habitual.
Habit, habitual,
Yeah.
ritual.
We get triggered and we react in a habitual way. There's a pattern to how we operate. We're stuck in a control pattern and and it just reinforces it. And we become less and less loving to ourselves and others. When we become more guilty and judgmental and we become more invested in ignoring that reality. We
And
become more
defending the false
defending it.
self.
Yeah, because we don't want to go there. We don't realize, oh my God, I've just become what. Because remember, victims become perpetrators. You become what you judge. That's the fundamental basis of the psychological warfare we've been subjected to. That the fundamental nature of polarity is conflict. When reality, the fundamental nature of reality is unity. You have to have two things in contrast with each other to understand the whole. Masculine, feminine is that's why they're going after the gender thing. You can't have balance in the universe without a masculine, feminine principle.
Mhm.
It's not about the difference between them, it's about the balance between them. So they don't want us to come into balance. So the three biggest targets of the controlled narrative throughout history, the three biggest trigger words reactionaryism will trigger is God, aliens, and the Nazarene, Jesus. Why is that? Because they're the three biggest threats to the control system. If we really get the reality of those three subjects and how they relate to us, they're done. That's exactly what's happening right now.
That's what's coming. I mean, there you can't deny there is an absolute wave of the Nazarene and God,
Mhm.
like
The reality of it.
going through our pores, the awakening
Mm.
of love of God to my 81-year-old mother
Yeah.
and my 51-year-old self. Like, you couldn't have caught us dead publicly declaring love of God because it's put in the same
How's it
category
seen?
as religion. It like we can't talk about this with anyone we know or love. They will put it automatically in what's been brainwashed into us
Mm.
for thousands of years. And I think so much of my pain and so many others is the not aloneness that those that we loved are not along with us in this. Very intentionally, somehow. I don't understand that. Why are we so alone in this? Why do we lose everyone? Why do all the relationships that no longer vibe at our frequency fall away? You know what I'm saying? Like it's so lonely. I think I want to share it with everybody, but I don't know. I went off
Yeah,
topic. I probably
no, no, it's all related. It's all related, but that's, yeah, how do we pull that together? Um,
religion, love, unity, polarity, the
hmm,
awakening. Oh, the three trans words, uh,
hmm.
God,
Trans words of
ET,
wisdom. Yeah.
and the Nazarene.
Hmm.
And ET stuff is happening all over the planet,
Yeah. Because
right?
we're ready. We're now, a lot of people are saying, why don't they just come here and fix it? And they told me directly, we cannot do it for you. But what do they mean by it? Getting a handle on these other three topics. They can connect with us when we've got a handle on this reality of our. Think about this, nothing in the universe can exist without a point of origin. So now apply that to consciousness. The universe can't exist without somebody be aware of it. Where did that come from?
Chicken or the egg.
Exactly. God said to me, totality of understanding is beyond your comprehension. But that makes, I mean, just apply scientific logic
Hmm.
to it.
Hmm.
It's just common sense. Consciousness had to have a beginning point. Here it is. And where did it come from? Now,
So
that's why it's such a distortion, by the way, religion, because they don't want us to clock that, to connect directly with our source
yeah, it's
in our
such a
direct.
distortion. It's such a distortion. Just like everything is so inverted. Like Anne just asked in the chats earlier, so does that mean Eve came first?
Yeah,
Right? Because you were saying all biological life comes from the female.
that's why 0 point, there is no form to it. This thing in physics called 0 point, which is uh, where the universe comes from.
Is that what God called the something of cold?
Yes, yeah.
Zone
Someone
of
asked
cold.
him, "Where are you?" He said, "The zone of cold." So 0 point in physics is absolute zero. The temperature drops so much that all the laws of physics break down. There's no light. Light can't operate. Physics can't operate. It looks the way science and materialism describe it is everything collapses into 0 point, and to a degree that's true, but it comes out of it first. That's why the universe is a cone shape, and that's why God used the name Tom, T balance om. So how's that put? Remember the Vedic scriptures, the source material that the Bible came through. And by the way, he called it your word book, not his word book. He called it your word book is a portion of letting through of truth. It's just the controlled narrative of the ancient world. It's the mainstream media of the ancient world. People couldn't read or write, so they used religion to distort their perception of reality. But that source material is all put together at the Atlantean time. Uh, the the group, let's say the elders understood what was playing out and what would happen, so they put in contingencies to make sure that all the information about the reality of civilization, where we came from, what humanity is, etc., was all put into a form that could be held through this whole dark period. Just remember that we were pretty much knocked back to the Stone Age. So within about 3 or 4 generations, all living memory of the Atlantean Age was gone. But the problem was that we didn't have with the Stone Age, we didn't have the sophistication, the mental sophistication to be able to understand what they were talking about. So it had to be put into code. How do you describe a cell phone 15,000, 10,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago? You can't just say cell
30
phone.
years ago.
30 years ago, exactly,
Right.
you've got to
Right.
put it into an analogy. Now, what those of the interference did, God said there was a lot of fear after the destruction of Atlantis. You can imagine. I mean, it wiped out civilization. So the force required, there were a lot of elements that happened. The force required to do that, it drove people on. That to survive it, we had to go underground. There are cities in mountains where a lot of human groups and they lived there for a long time. It took a
Wow.
long time before the ecosystem came back into balance. It was dark, black for years afterwards, years. And
Wow.
that's what happened. That's what Middle Earth's all about. Middle Earth is the Atlanteans who didn't participate in what the destruction was all about and went down underground. Now they've stayed there because what happened above ground was the element that chose this darkness had to live through the process, and that was the divine that's the purpose of the human race. The analogy in Star Wars, which was given to Lucas by God, by Tom, by the way, he called it the story of the universe. Again, analogy is Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. So the human race is akin to Anakin Skywalker, chosen to bring balance back, created to bring balance back to the universe, chosen to bring balance back to the Force. He got angry at God for loss of love and became Darth Vader. And that looks like he went the wrong way. Now, that's an analogy for this. Anakin Skywalker is an analogy for the ego in service to self, the sacred masculine. Darth Vader is an analogy for the ego that controls. So how did Anakin Skywalker live his purpose? By becoming Darth Vader and going right next to the Emperor, the one that fell. This force, the ego that's created this problem in the first place. He was right there at the center, so that when the time came to turn back to the light, he was the one that did it. So that's the human race. That's the Hebrew. The Hebrew are a microcosm of the human race, just like the human race are a microcosm of the galaxy. It's a fractal geometry thing. That's why the Hebrew is so important, very important. God's chosen people. Let's take
Are
the
they
religion,
also yeah, take the religious stuff out of it. Are they also the Hoovid?
the
Who
Hoovid.
Hoovid? Okay, okay.
So the reason he used that name, God used that name, is think phonetics. Like who sounds like WHO, who, the identity, sense of self, and id is the ego, ID. So they hold the sense of self, Anakin Skywalker, and they hold the ego that controls. They've been heavily infiltrated by those of the interference because of their power to transform the human race back into to basically to overthrow this whole system. And that's what's playing out in Israel right now. Don't believe the mainstream media. Those of the interference control the mainstream media through Mossad.
So
That's what
what are we not to believe in mainstream media? I want some details right now.
it's not.
I
Well, look at what the history of the 20th century is social engineering. You could write a textbook on social engineering with the history of the 20th century. It was all done deliberately by this group. The turn of the 1900s, a lot of things happened. The apothecary healthcare system was destroyed by the Rockefellers to introduce all the necessary elements to create the World Health Organization and a medical model that delivered the final point of the plan, the pandemic, the choice. World War II was set up by World War One, which created a scenario where the Allies treated the German people very, very badly. This whole victim perpetrator thing. That set up a lot of anger within like a tinderbox within the German population. Then the Great Depression happened. They did that deliberately. That was all done deliberately by those of the interference who control the central banking system. The day before the crash of Wall Street, they all went to gold. That's why they did it. Then they crashed the economy for everyone else while they made a shit ton of money, excuse my French, so that they were up here watching the whole thing. Why was that Why was that important? Because then along comes Hitler, an MK Ultra agent designed to constellate all of that anger around an ideology called fascism, which is what? Victim perpetrator. They were really angry. They needed someone to blame. Who handled the banking system? There were a lot of Hebrew within the banking system. They're very good with money. Their minds are very strong. But they aren't the ones in control of the problem, though. But they were made a very good scapegoat. So the final solution is a test bed for what they were doing right now, the final solution for humanity. So that was all set up. World War II, what happened? Why did Eisenhower say, beware the military industrial complex? They privatized, they created this apparatus called Secret Service. CIA came out of it. They created an industrial powerhouse called the USA geared towards military. So they created this whole scenario. And then what came out of that? The UN, the World Health Organization, the Economic Forum, World Economic Forum. What was that all about? unity. It was all set up with the premise to make sure the rise of totalitarianism couldn't happen. And that was all enshrined in the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Code. Now, if that was the war to end all wars, if that was all of the World War One, World War Two thing was about stopping, making sure this didn't ever happen again, they did a spectacularly bad job, because not only did it not stop, it got 10 times worse afterwards. What the instability that it created around the world was huge. The way they approached the state of Israel was completely the opposite way. All they had to do was to co-create with the Arabs, is to finally come to peace with each other and live in harmony together in the same area. It's sacred to both of them. All they had to do was honour that. Why didn't they? Because there was a reactionaryism embedded within the Hebrew that they could just trigger. Problem, reaction, solution. So they just got rid of them, and it felt justified. And that's been building up over time. So Mossad, CIA, MI6, MI5, God said directly, your UN is not so united. Now, what did he mean? It's not what it appears to be, but it's also the centre of disunity. UN peacekeepers going to Africa, all sorts of places. What are they really doing? They're acting as a conduit for human trafficking, slavery, MK Ultra agents, economic stability. They basically infiltrated Africa, South America, and they destroyed their economies and cultures, cultural genocide, so that they create an emotional trauma, family system constellation, generational trauma that then they could bring through the mass migration, immigration that they're bringing out right now. So everything that's playing out right now was all set up through World War II, through the 20th century. Think of it as a microcosm, a template. Then they created this whole process, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, which was all designed to bring us to this point now called COVID. And what's happened since then, mass migration, all embedded with MK Ultra agents, cultural genocide. They've flooded Australia with 165 people a day from India and China. Right after they've sent in they've given them all of the industrial power to create this middle class that they've never had before. Suddenly they've all got money. Very materialistic now and very against spirituality. They've got a massive emotional investment that goes back generations in that story being true. Just like everyone in Germany wanted to believe Hitler was real. Which is why at the end of World War II, three things happened. The Nazis were executed, massive crowds publicly. Then the media heads were executed. The crowds were a third bigger again because they were more angry at the people who sold them the lie than they were at the ones who created it. Interesting, huh? Then what happened? There was a spike in the suicide rate because there was no one left to point the finger at. They had to take responsibility for the fact that they bought the lie. Had they not bought the lie, the Holocaust wouldn't have happened. And yes, it did happen. Yes, it did happen. The Holocaust happened
To the
because,
scale that they say.
yeah, the reason family system constellation work exists is because Bert Hellinger, he started out as a Franciscan monk, and he was German, and he's a homeopathic dose to heal what happened in Germany. He's German, so he's a Franciscan monk, and he was sent to the Zulu as a missionary, and he became so disillusioned. But the love that he saw there compared to the lack of love that he was seeing in the Western world, he became very disillusioned with the church. And so he left the priesthood. He came back to Europe and he studied psychology. Then he started getting Auschwitz survivors, and no one could do anything with them. They were so traumatized, no one could help them. And he remembered this thing the Zulu used to do. To them, if one person had a problem, they all did. So they used to do these dances and rituals to act out, to get into the spirit of the problem. In other words, they recognized there was a problem they didn't understand, but there was a truth to it. And if they made themselves available to it, that would show itself. So they would go for these rituals where they would let the problem speak to them. And then they would reorganize themselves around the problem so that it dissipated. And it worked. And he remembered, oh, I wonder if that'll work with these people. So he made dolls to represent their families. Because remember, some of them were the only survivors out of massive families. Imagine the trauma that takes. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
So he would use dolls. He would get them to put them in an order that Don't think too much about it. Just place them in an order. Place them together in some sort of pattern. So they would do that. Then he would get them to touch their finger on dad and speak. Don't think too much about it, just say something. And this whole process would play out. And they would end up reorganizing how the elements in the family were placed together and where they were in relationship to that. And the healing process that took people through was mind blowing. So family system constellation work came about as a way to repair generational trauma so that these people can come back to themselves. And it worked.
Nothing else worked.
Nothing else
Nothing
worked.
else worked. Okay, back to the scale of it. So there's a lot of people who believe there weren't even that many Jews in Europe. Like, that's what I mean by the scale of the Holocaust. Not that many. I'm not discounting it. I'm
Look,
saying it is made like, yeah,
how do those of the interference operate? They surround the baby with bathwater, so we just throw the whole thing out.
yeah,
They don't want us to look at that. So they'll make inconsistencies all around it. So it's not really so much important about that.
right,
Let all
right.
that confusion be there. But clearly something big happened during World War II. And yet there are Auschwitz survivors, there are survivors
Mm.
from all of those camps. And you will come across people, I've come across people in family system constellation work who are grandchildren of SS. And their lives were they were going crazy. They had this dynamic happening in their life that got worse and worse and worse until they were about to kill themselves. A lot of them did. And we saw some of them come through because my partner and I went through a training process with these four modalities. That's how they came about to us. Four pillars of the transition is what the Arcturians describe them as. And what we saw come out of it. Family system constellations where they would have to kick bodies into pits, huge mass in Hungary, particularly, was a big one. What happened to the Hungarian Jews was horrible. And that repairing that was what had to happen. It had to be seen and recognized. Then the family system could be put back into right order. So he was responsible for that, not them. That
Right.
had to be recognized for them to
Family
come back.
systems constellation is that related to past life regressions? Because past life,
Women.
quantum healing,
Mm.
hypnosis healing, whatever,
Mhm.
QHHT, it's kind of similar,
Same
going
principle.
same principle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
this cycle's been going for thousands of years. So we've come in and come in and come in at different times. So we have karmic responsibility for acting out in a particular way that contributed to the problem for others. So we there's a way to own, come back. So sometimes you're born into this life with residue from many past lives, and that's what this life's about, is to bring all of that back into
Well,
balance.
that's what you and Arna thought was quite possibly happening with me. I'm carrying an incredible weight that is not mine, but I've taken it
As if
instead
it's
of the rest of the family. I've taken
That's
it.
right. That's what happens when you're not willing to own your own crap. It's still there. The imbalance is still there. And when you have children, that imbalance is passed on.
What?
So that
I'm owning my crap.
you are. But
You mean that's what happens when they're not willing to own their own crap? Okay.
it's
Okay.
exactly, there's two things for you. Some
It,
of it's yours, some of it's theirs. So give
right.
back what's theirs and look at only what's yours. But how are you going to do that? You need a process to get clear on what that is. So that's what the four pillars of the transition represent, particularly family system constellation work. It's a way to
Yeah.
get clear on what's yours and what's theirs.
Aren't all of these things and tinctures and tools and med beds and QHHT and FSC or FCS, whatever order people put it in, aren't these all bridges to what, like, to get us to where we're all going?
Well, it's to get us back to the truth of who we are. The way Ramana put it is the truth of who you are is untouched by any of it. That's the healing. But how do we
Right.
do that?
But
So,
won't we be in a place where it could be like okay, done,
now
instead
what
of all of this
exactly?
stuff?
Yes. Now, what is that and why isn't it simple? Because again, getting back to this spiral,
Yeah.
And again, what I was going to say is when I was having a lot of trouble just thinking, oh, okay, so I've got to just share what I've been spoken, what's been given to me to help me. And if I don't do it, it's going to be a complete waste of all the energy and help and time that I've put into it. And yet I've got such a big resistance to it because anytime I've tried to be myself, I've been hit, punched, kicked, like, and I've got a lot. Now, the only way for me to heal from that is to actually step into the action.
Yes, I've
It's
watched
not,
you trigger people. I've watched you
you've got
trigger
to do
people,
it.
and all you're doing is standing in your truth. That's it. I know. I know.
But they
It's
can't
wild.
they can't stay in control and accept that. Now,
Right.
for me, that's what I'm talking about. That's none of my business. But part of me thought it was, and I have to be honest. I had to be honest about that. I thought it was all about me. I was to blame for the reaction, and that caused a lot of pain. And that has to be moved through. You can't do anything to speed it up because the reason you want to speed it up is the same reason you try to get rid of it, and you can't. It doesn't work. So you just got to be open to letting it play out. And the only way to, and I was at the point where they told me the work, you've done the work. Now it's time to live the reality of the work has been done. The only way to do that is just what I call moving from a passive phase to an active phase. That's what they meant. Now it's time to step out. That's where it'll crystallize and you'll realize what you'll realize the reality of where you're really at, how much of this, because it's all subconscious, the work's subconscious, you're not aware of
Hmm.
it. It's in acting from it. That's where you connect with it consciously and it lets you go. This shadow lets you go. It's a process. So that's for me personally, that's what this is about. That's all it's about, is for me to get clear on the truth of who I am. That was never a problem in the first place. I thought it was, that's all. Then it's simple and it's clear, and I'm not caught up in how it's received. That's about where they're at. The
Right.
way it was put to me, offer all that you ask, offer all that you are and give only what's asked for. You're not
Yep.
going to keep pushing it to convince them because that means you're not convinced yourself. And I've kind of come through a big process with that. Now, when I was struggling with this, I was at home on my own. I was really struggling. They showed me this spiral and they said, this is where you're at. There's a final point in the spiral, like this circle. They said, that's the last point. And I said, well, what is it? They said, victim perpetrator. And then they turned the circle up this way and had a dot, which is the sun glyph, which represents the mind, awareness. Darkness is an absence of light. So this problem is simply because it exists because we're not aware of what it really is. And fear stops us from going there. So we stay unaware. We justify that with all sorts of opinions, which never bloody work. And that's why we hit the wall. But the last point, it's the hardest thing to let go of because of the amount of emotional trauma we've been through, is that we're a victim and they're a perpetrator. But what that does is it stops us seeing that we always had a choice. We thought we had to be someone else to get love. Now, it doesn't matter how young and vulnerable and innocent we were and unaware of that we were. We didn't have the mental sophistication. We were 3, 4, 5, whatever it is. And it was reinforced many, many times over after that. We were shocked out of ourselves by an event, a response we got, and we didn't know what it was. We just thought we weren't right in that moment. We didn't have words for it either. It was a feeling. We put words to it later. But that's where free will is. We didn't make an informed choice. We didn't have the awareness, but now we do. So the whole
Mhm.
point of this spiral is to get the mind above the emotional reactionaryism so it can be a simple choice. Oh, like Neo in the last scene of The Matrix. The condition is coming out of the woodwork. The agents in the Matrix are coming out of every wall. They're having it because quick, he's getting away. Let's throw everything we've got at him. And he's not even watching them. He's looking at his hands and batting them off like, yeah, whatever. He's back to what I'm doing. Well, what? Oh my God, I'm the one creating it. Great. Well, I'll stop creating it. Now, what they showed me, victim, when you accept responsibility that you gave your power away, now you've got your power back in your hands, make a new choice. And I said, well, what does that look like? They said, letting love in. So me doing this, what if people like it? What if it's okay? What if
Mhm.
the sense of connection to others, my tribe, my people, my life, what if that's what happens? What if it's not what my mind's telling me? What if I actually get the love I've always felt unseen and unheard?
Right. Right. There was such a level of every time I did an Instagram post, public publicly saying Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern time, Gareth and I go live on YouTube, there's such a layer of fear because I have a lot of followers and I don't know who in my life, family or friend who I have nothing to do with anymore is could be watching. So it was like, okay, do
Mm.
I, right? Do I let love in? But I mean,
You
look
get this
at the
right.
people sending me love through this chat right now. Look at the people who reach out from all over the world, all over
Now,
the world,
that's
on
right.
like all the continents reaching out because we're sharing our truth because it's truth or die right now. It's
That's
plain
right.
and simple. And death isn't real, but that's what I say. It's like ride or die, bitch. Truth all the way. I don't have time for nonsense. I mean, somebody said it in the chats. Maybe it was Janelle. She has no, like, doesn't have friends any longer who used to be her friends. She can't have that surface level conversation with people. It's not feeding her soul. It's not filling her cup. And to do a little left turn so Lindsay gets answered, she asks those of the interference, what was the goal? And I know what you say the goal is because she says like all these terrible things that have happened to humanity, all the brainwashing, all the wars, all the death, all the like the twisting and turning of our egos.
What's
To
it
to
for?
buy all the lies. What is it for? What were they trying to accomplish? And I know I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I want you to explain it on a much more human level. They were trying to make the transition with you.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
Right. Cool. Okay. So, what does lack of an absolute belief in absolute reality? We have a natural state. And he said to me that all self-aware life is five-sided, five-dimensional. So what is that? The three physical dimensions, height, depth, and breadth. Time is the fourth. The fifth is spirit, consciousness, pure being. That's the T, the center point of where the upright and the T touches the cross T. There's a balance point. That's the fifth dimension. To the left are the four masculine principles of space and time. To the right are the four feminine principles. That's why God uses time spokesman for the
Tom.
council of nine. There
Yeah.
are eight with one spokesman, the masculine principle, in service to those four. That's what God is. And Om is when I was two, I saw one frequency. I was humming it in my body. It came through me, not from me, and it was everywhere I looked. And all the form was really just this one frequency. The equivalent is let there be light. Now, that means we have a natural state. Uh, what happened in the fall of Atlantis? We chose to go into sexual desire to the point where we lost touch with spirituality. That's what caused it to collapse. We chose by free will to go into pure physical, which meant we were shut off consciously from that fifth dimension,
From
which
source?
is from, well, yeah, our ability to hold our full five-dimensional nature, we were shut down to 10%. So in spirituality, we relate because we can't, like the universe, the sum total energy of who you are cannot be destroyed. It can only be pulled out of your awareness. We relate to that as higher self, but that's really all. That's what the Nazarene was saying. Put it all back together again. This is what you look like.
Right.
That's five-dimensional. That's the purpose of why the Nazarene came. That's where we're
Why
going.
can't they, right, but why can't those of the
Why do they?
interference come with us? Why
Why do
why
they
do they
need?
have to do all of this to try and make this transition with us? Why can't they make the transition on their own if it's all God?
The human element, they had the choice at the time of the Nazarene. This was plan A was the Nazarene's offer, God's offer, the Nazarene's offer to this is the human. Remember that those of the interference are made up of three elements. The human side, that was the part that said yes to being infiltrated in Atlantis, which is known as the cult of Baal. They're a satanic end times death cult, making death real, darkness into a thing. They were used as a conduit, a device, a creative power to make that happen. So there's a human element. They were told at the time of the Nazarene, behind the Roman Empire, Caligula, etc., Turn back now. Do not create the corporate system. Don't take another step to create corporations because that was the final part of the plan. The fourth beast is corporations, and you're redeemable. It'll hurt like hell because you've got a lot of karma to go through, but we can help you with that, and you'll come back to the light. And it means that what happened in the last 2,000 years won't happen. If you go there though, you'll sever your heart connection to the universe, which means you'll cease to exist when the human race goes back up to 5D. You can't go there because you aren't 5D anymore. You're just physical, but
Oh,
physical
I
is an
never
illusion.
understood you. I've heard you say that a million times, but I never quite understood that.
Like a dream image, they'll just disappear. But they'll go the way God described what their experience is. The Klaus Schwab, I hope you can hear this. We would not like to be in their shoes. It's
Right.
another way of saying they don't walk with God. They're not connected to the universe anymore. And it's going to be, think of it this way. If life's a boomerang, what you put out comes back to you. Think of all the lives they've destroyed for the last 15,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now imagine living
You,
each one like it was your own.
oof, oof. That's a
That's hell.
hell of
That's what
a
hell really is.
that's a hell of a life review. So,
They've created hell. They've created that. They're going to have to
and
live
there's
what.
no, okay, so you think there are those in physical form on the planet now that are unredeemable,
Mhm.
that are going to be
Oh,
booked out?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
that's why they
not
need
all
organs. That's why they need loosh. That's why they need this blood. That's why they need it because they're breaking down physically. They've
placenta,
all of it.
foreskin,
That's what
all of
that's
it.
for. Mhm.
Oh, so
Yeah, because
awful.
this physical. Remember, God said of the human race, "You are the most physically dense race in the universe because of this." Now, that's part of how we live our purpose to help the whole fabric of the universe come
Right.
back into balance, is because we're right at the foundation layer of it and we're self aware. We're the only race there. But we're five dimensional. So we're bringing that reality back up to full fifth dimensional reality, which is spirit. It's all coming from source. So
Yeah.
that's our purpose. But,
Um,
but that means we're getting less physical, which means they're breaking down physically.
okay. Lindsay's asking if those of the interference are living beings.
There's an E now. The second group is ET races, malevolent ET races.
Oh,
The analogy,
yes. You told me this the other day, the three levels,
yeah. So the malevolent ET races, the way this was described in Star Wars is the Empire. So the Emperor is the one that fell, the
right?
ET
And
races, and then they go into each civilization and they pull them up into it. They invade them and they pull them up into it. So the analogy is the masks. You lose your identity. You become. Gene Roddenberry spoke to Tom through The Only Planet of Choice for decades, and that's how Star Trek came about. He
yeah.
wanted to know all about self-aware life throughout the universe. The analogy Tom gave him was the Borg. Your uniqueness will be added to our own, and they all
Okay,
look
so
the same.
wait. Using the Star Wars analogy again, the Emperor is
The
the one that fell.
one that fell.
The malevolent ETs are the Empire?
The
What?
Draco, reptilians, there are
Reptilian.
multiple races involved. Yeah.
And then the third level
It's the human,
is the human,
us.
the deep state, the
Yeah.
cabal, the Khazarian mafia.
Yeah.
That's the third level.
There are two levels
So
of that too.
say
There's
that again.
the group. If you know their face and their name, they're the minion level. There's a management level, let's say, above that, which no one.
Okay.
I've seen one photo of one of them
Yes, you told me that. And
standing
that,
next to a
okay.
16-year-old Bill Gates.
Oh,
Mm.
oh.
Tells you how
Okay,
that.
so Lindsay asks, are they aware of who they are? Like,
Oh
do
yeah,
they,
absolutely.
this
They
is
know all of
all,
this, and they know they're screwed. They
and they
just
know
don't.
they're screwed. Do do the minions still playing out in the physical know they're screwed? Have they
Yep.
been briefed?
Well, so you're going through this thing called ego death.
Yes.
The ego that controls is dying. It's losing itself. It's fighting back. It's fighting for survival. They're just doing the same thing. But what is the nature of the one that fell? It's the one that fell that needs us to make the transition. He's using everybody else. You know, dance with the devil, you're gonna.
So could everybody else make the transition. Are they redeemable? Even the malevolent ETs, even the deep state, those three levels severed their heart connection. Okay. Okay.
That's the importance of what's happening on planet Earth. That's the power of the human race, and that's the whole reason we were put here. The way it was described to us, they told this to my partner in the Sinai Desert in '99. They called the plan "Shoot for the Moon, Life's Best Hand." So when we looked up the definition of "Shoot for the Moon," by the way, it was it's a strategy in the card. This is actually in more than one card game, but the definition, the first definition we laid eyes on it's a strategy in the card game Trumps. So there's that name, and it means basically if you've got a lot of really good cards, that means you might have most of them, which means they can't have them. So you take a punt. You think you've got the winning hand. So you put all your hands on the table, you lay it all out on the table and you say, shoot for the moon, and everyone else has to do the same thing. Right? So it's a bit of a risk, but you're taking an educated guess that's what life did. So the solution to those of the interference, God said, here you go. Here's life's best hand, the human race. I'll put everything into one race. If you can get this race at the most physically dense level of the universe, you've got you've got the goal you've been looking for. In other words, it used the same strategy that those of the interference use. Temptation. Wow, that's tempting, isn't it? How about you jump in there without making an informed choice? What are the ramifications if I get it wrong? If God's got the better hand? Well, that's what's happening right now. The problem they've got is they went all in. That's what it means. The system, those of the interference, they went all in, which means they've got to win or they're done, done. And I'm talking done on a universal level. That's what's
So
happening right now.
what
Um,
about
That's why all eyes are on Earth.
that's why all eyes are on
There
Earth.
are civilizations here. There's a Galactic Federation. By the way, the Galactic Federation and the physical and the Galactic Federation of Light are one and the same. If you're a ninth density race, you're almost completely unphysical. So that's the Federation of Light aspect. The Arcturians, the Pleiadians, there are several races involved. They're like Yoda. Yeah, after Yoda and Obi-Wan leave the physical, like, think of them as that.
Yeah.
So they're that part of the rebel fleet, the guides. And then there are other physical races that are worker civilizations. So, but
What about
hang on one sec. There are other galactic federations from other galaxies all around the universe here watching.
I love that.
Mm.
I want them down here in my kitchen. So what about Galactic Federation of Worlds? Somebody asked that on one of our talks. Is Gareth talking about Federation of Light or Federation of
Yeah, both.
Worlds?
They're one and the same.
Okay, okay,
They
okay.
work together.
Okay,
The
so
analogy in Star Wars is the rebel fleet and these spirit guides, Yoda, Obi-Wan, Kenobi, and the female, I can't remember. Yeah, so they come to them as it's kind of like the Nazarene and these ninth density races. God said nine is completion.
yep, yep, yep. What about so mainstream media, Hollywood, military, education, medical, like what about those who push the narrative consciously? What are you laughing at? What am
Oh,
I
I'm
doing?
sorry, I just caught Lindsay. We're like a high stakes
Isn't she
table in
hilarious?
Vegas.
She's so funny.
And not only that, we won.
Right, we won. But they're redeemable because you've explained that to me before. The whole Hollyweird is like a created to propagate the propaganda. Like that is their purpose. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily for entertainment. So if they were born into that ass backward, messed up church of like being born female, raised male, blah blah blah, trans, so like all of that stuff. Like it started from youth. So there is room for redemption. They were victimized and then became perpetrators. They're not of those three layers necessarily.
And
Okay.
there are some people in this deep state element that can be brought back through that because of that. They were kidnapped and then put through a torture. There's a satanic ritual they put them through, which is about torture, so that they're basically almost schizophrenic. It's horrible what they do to kids, but it
Horrible.
turns them into minions. So there are parts of that are like that. There are others who are groomed through a process of they bring you into, let's say you go into Hollywood and you've got this. Nicole Kidman went through this. So did what's his face that married her,
Oh,
Tom
Keith Urban.
Tom
Keith
Cruise.
Urban. Oh, Tom Cruise, the first one.
Hmm. So that they went through a different version, which is this ego that controls wanted to be someone in the world. They go through this career and they get brought in and they're slowly groomed through these secret societies and they make these choices and then incrementally they're gradually steered to a point where they've almost chosen it. They're brought in, it's too late. They've distorted themselves. That's a different thing. There are others within the political system, the legal system, the corporate system who are blackmailed. You do what we want or we'll kill your family.
Absolutely. I mean, didn't isn't it kind of famously known that they killed Kanye West's family? And basically, if a celebrity is villainized publicly, they basically wanted out of the
Yeah,
system, and so they destroyed them or tried
destroy
to
them one
destroy
way or
them or
another.
what
Yeah,
have you.
that's right.
But
The
then,
same
like,
thing happened to Gene Roddenberry. They tried to discredit him. They told him there were two young girls in his life. I can't remember whether they were daughters or
oh
nieces. You
yes,
know that video?
that video.
I was told that they said to him, "We'll wipe them out. You do this video and you make it convincing, or we'll kill them." So that they could, because they know exactly who. When I was there in the UK, I was there for 3.5 months and I spoke to God twice. But the start of that and the end of that. Whilst I was there, I was taken by this group that held that situation that from 51 to 93, when Phyllis Schlemmer channeled Tom, they were responsible for holding this group. They're called the Nine Group, and there are lots of elements to that. But um, they took me around Wiltshire, and there were sacred sites that we had to go to. There was a process, but they would point out agents that were there because they could see them. The editor would say to me, "Look at that guy over there, pretending to read the paper and not notice." So they know fully well who Tom is. They know full well what that is. They know exactly what's going on. So they do everything they can to discredit. And that's what the human race has to own. It
Mm,
works. The fact that all they have to do is put out a video like that and we just buy it. Now that's
right.
running out of road because, like I
Yes.
said, there is a they with an agenda. They manipulate us through the control narrative to think in the ways that serve them and go against us. So we
And
throw the
then
baby.
and then AI further confuses the whole thing. Nobody knows
Exactly.
what's real and what isn't. I mean,
Exactly.
that's serving a purpose right there to get sleepers to question what they're looking at. That's actually serving it.
Yeah, and they're trying to get in the way of this
Sleepers.
first
That's so
contact,
mean.
open contact with ET. Tell me this, if you were an ET race capable of crossing the galaxy, would you sort of hang around and wait if you were going to invade? Like, what are they waiting for? If they're malevolent, they're going to invade. What are they waiting for? I mean, we don't stop and think.
Well, it's so funny. I'm always saying like to I don't know, not always saying, but just like explaining like after my awakening, I knew things I didn't understand how I knew. I knew what was coming. I could hear you when I would not be able to hear you. And and I will never call it first contact.
Open
It's
contact.
open
So see, I
contact,
corrected myself. Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah. But then people argue with me, and the know-it-alls in the spiritual world, like, Katie, they've always been here. They're here right now, and I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. What I'm talking about with open contact is on such a grand scale that nobody will be able to argue with us about what's happening,
exactly.
what
That's
happened, what's happening. It's for all eyes to see. No more arguments and us feeling crazy and looking like the lunatics that we quite often look like right now. I
that's right. And
mean,
that's part
yeah.
of the role of COVID is to get that, maybe I'm wrong, factor in, and open contact as well. And that's why it's coming in stages. Now, if you want to get technical, open contact really started with Roswell in
Right.
1947. So I was
Yep.
told that Roswell was about the gift of Roswell was direct energy because the ship had direct energy systems on it. So what they did, those of the, remember there was about a week where a newspaper, small town newspaper, published it and it took off. And the spirit that people met that with was, wow, they're here. Let's talk with
Excitement.
them. And
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to know, wow, what's life
Oh,
like on your planet? That was the
right.
spirit. It was open hearted. There was no fear. It was open hearted. And then this whole weather balloon bullshit came in. And then what happened next? The 50s was all about sci-fi invasion movies,
Yep.
alien invasion movies, predictive
Yep.
programming to try and
Yeah.
get in the way and shut it down. But the gift was they basically said, we are here. You tell them about us or we will. So a deal was made. All right, we'll wait. Now they remember this whole thing was set. They were set up by humanity. The whole thing was a setup for them. They've been trapped by us, by this whole situation. So they knew right from the start how they would respond, just like the Nazarene knew. Plan B, which I'll describe in a sec. Plan A, you turn back to the light, job done. There was a plan B. So this is the whole thing. All right, well, wait till you guys hang yourselves out to dry. Either you tell them and you're over now, or you in the end times, the charlatans reveal themselves by fighting to keep alive. If you're a prey animal, your camouflage only works if you're still. So you got to really time that last move right, because otherwise you're going to blow your cover. Well, that's what they're doing. So that's what happened. It was to put it out there. Okay, right now you got to let's get real. Now, why was 1947 chosen? I was told that 19.47 degrees, God called it the entry point. So if you're if you're on a starship with direct energy systems, basically they create electromagnetic energy around the ship. That's why they can travel the way they do in our atmosphere. It creates a bubble of anti-gravity around the ship. So it's not actually affected by gravity or friction. So the forces that we have to overcome with a counterforce called a jet engine or a car, their approach is completely to take those forces out of the picture. Then you don't have to worry about it. You only need a little bit of energy to move the ship then, and you can change direction on a dime. You can go from this direction to that direction, right angles, which would splat us up against the wall because the ship has its own center of gravity. So for you, there's no change within the ship. But the thing about direct energy is it destroys the central system
Oh my God.
because now you
Yeah.
don't need money. That's the knock-on effect is it would destroy the central banking system, the centralized control system. That's why they had to shut it out. But that's what's happening anyway.
Right.
So this whole 19.47 degrees, if you're in one of these starships and you're entering a solar system from the outside, solar systems are also an electromagnetic energy field. You've got to have the right angle of trajectory coming in, or you'll disrupt the systems in the ship. So you've got to calculate the right angle of trajectory, and they're different depending on the solar system. 19.67, which is my birth year, is about another star system, which gets back to my sole purpose,
It's
for
all
instance.
math.
He told me mathematics is the language of the universe.
It's all math. It's all the patterns are incredible.
But there's a masculine and feminine side to mathematics. The divination arts are the feminine, plotting trajectory. Remember the map? So we've got a compass called the four pillars of the transition to get out from under this trauma. Well, we've got a map called our astrology, numerology, divination arts. They made that whack job because they use it. They don't want us to know about that. They use it. Absolutely, 100%. That was one of the big ways they operate. They can read, because it's how to read lines of intersecting trajectory. What's my birth chart? Tell me about how I should move through life. The more you are aware of that, the less caught up in these patterns you get. There's a thing called North Node, is what the elements you've got to master to move through life in a way that works, tells you when you're going the wrong way, if you understand what it means. The South Node is past life. You've already got a handle on that. That tends to be your comfort zone. The North Node is challenging. It's going to take you into your, outside your comfort zone, but that's the whole point. mastering life. You got to go into a challenge. Kids approach that like, great, let's go. Let's figure out how to make the cubby house. But we so traumatized with being wrong, we've got to get it right. So therefore we avoid it. So we fall back into the South Node. These sorts of things. The more you get a handle on it. Tarot is a great way to get a map for where you're at now and read the dynamics of intersecting trajectories, where you're headed and how that's going to meet. Then you can read these coincidences, coinciding elements coming in and how they relate to how you're moving. You can read the pattern, sacred masculine. They don't want us to know any of this stuff.
No, no. Somebody once told me that there isn't a billionaire on the planet who does not consult his own personal astrologer first thing in the morning, right? Like they run their lives by the stars. They run their businesses, their relationships, their vacations, their everything by the stars.
Exactly. Exactly. So we're catching up with that reality. And what breaks this reactionaryism of all these, like you say, know-it-alls out there is COVID. If they lied
Mm.
about that, what else have they lied about? And it's
Yeah,
going to be a very humbling experience for a lot of people,
a lot
particularly
of
academia.
people. Oof. Yeah, I know. I know.
It's already happening, but it unravels all the other conspiracy theories, so-called.
Do you want to answer a couple questions that I've
Well,
been
let's do
collecting for a week? Um, so let's see. Sonia had asked, can you ask Gareth if he knows Jazz Maheen? I met her in Thailand and have been hooked by her teachings since she's Australian as well, and she believes she's Arcturian.
it. Okay.
Are you
I
familiar with her? It's okay if you're not. That was only the question. She probably didn't even want it to be live. I just thought like maybe I'd ask. Why not? And then Lindsay says, Raphael says a mass awakening is happening in December. What are your thoughts on that? And I just wanted to add one thing that I think I was listening to Kelly Kolodny, and I was talking to you about this earlier today that, everyone talks about the portals 10, 10, 11, 11, 9, 9, about, preparing and shaking, shedding what's no longer for you. And I'm just like, portals my ass. They are hard, they are uncomfortable. I want to cry and jump off a bridge. But I get it as well, right? I mean, it's still motion, it's still change, it's still progress, whatever. But Kelly Gladney had said that this portal and this sloughing off, the shedding of behaviors or things that don't serve you is preparing us for letting love in December. Something about December specifically, a huge just love energy coming in. So then when I watched that after Lindsay asked me about Raphael saying mass awakening in December, and I think Lindsay is does Kelly Colodny channel Raphael? Is that where we got that? And that's why I'm making that connection. Anyway, what do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. Well, again, in January, the Arcturian showed me um, like a visual map of the year. And, we've been kind of, I think for about the previous 5 years, and this was a spirit in a lot of people, that we've been kind of, it's like not much had happened. It felt like everything was moving slowly and it was a bit grindy for a few people. It was, not absolute like that.
I
But
can't
they said
imagine.
that the pace would start to pick up in 2025. They showed me from April, but they said it will feel like it's very slow from May, June, July, and then it will start to pick up. And then they highlighted September and they call it
Yeah.
the slingshot. So there were events to look out. When they do this, they don't give me all the answers. They point me in a certain direction. It's up to me. They did this with COVID. Their final point of their plan is their most vulnerable point. They will lose control of the narrative. This will undo, divide, and conquer. Well, what was it? And as soon as COVID turned up, I knew what they were talking about. So I knew not to be afraid. I knew, here we go. So they did. That's what they do. So September was the slingshot. Look out for what happens. And Trump called out the UN. He basically described them to a T in front of them with the media watching.
Wonderful.
And as
Oh
soon as I
yes,
saw that,
that actually happened.
that
You
actually happened.
called out the UN. See, these are the things nobody's going to hear, right, from the mainstream media. Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
get confused. Look, there's a lot of psyop around Trump, and I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. You know, you stay with what you feel is right. Just be prepared to be wrong. All of us,
That
always.
I say that to everybody. I said it to my son. I say it to everybody. Prepare. I say it to myself. Prepare to be wrong. I'm prepared to be wrong. Are you? Right. Right.
Just remember the whole thing relies on a psyop, confusion. So how do you fight fire? You fight fire with fire. So there's a 5D psyop chess match going on. What they don't want is for that what they rely on is making the psyop so big that people don't want to take it on because they'll get buried by it. But they're also vulnerable to being matched by people who understand how they operate at their level. What better than a billionaire? He's operated at their level. This is what's going to happen with this sort of once people in the systems they're at the top, but there's a whole lot of people who have been running this stuff who have an understanding of how it all operates at their level. So once they start turning back, once they start turning away, it's going to happen fast because they know what they're doing. They know how to fight back and
Yeah.
not get caught up in this side. They know there's a vulnerable point and where they are and how to manipulate them, how to draw them out
Yeah.
into the media, because this is all about getting them to show themselves.
Hmm.
And they have to fight back, which means they've got to try and control the narrative around things. And what's this all rely on? Exposing the fact that the narrative is being controlled, that
Right.
our perception of reality is the problem and it's
Oh
being
yeah.
controlled
Yeah.
by a group. That's all this is about. So anyway, in September, UN is not so united. In other words, God pointed the finger and said, if you want to understand who they are and what they're doing and how it all came about, look at the UN. The United Nations, a centralization of power. Where's the most central point? The UN. It's like every country, supposedly. The UN, the whole 2030 thing, Davos, blah, blah, blah. That's them running it. So that makes sense that you've got to attack them directly. So when that was named publicly in the mainstream media, you know you're somewhere you've never been before. So then what happened? Slingshot. Poof, whatever that was about went out. Then November, so October, November were kind of like a dip.
Right.
And
But as
then December,
Roseanne pointed out in the chats, Three Eye Atlas was October, November, right? I mean,
exactly.
and everybody's talking about that. Mark wanted us to come back after Three Eye Atlas does whatever Three Eye Atlas does.
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
Well, that's all about the frequency coming from the sun and how it's impacting the core of the planet. So Three Eye Atlas is a way to take it to a new level because we resonate, the human body resonates at the same frequency as the core of the planet, the Schumann resonance. So as that rises, so does our planet, so does our body. So
Mhm.
that's what I meant. That's
So
all
Three
it's
Eye
saying.
Atlas is assisting us.
Yeah. Now, what happened in September was a new level of disconnecting those with interference from their ability to act on the threats. They're being eroded. Their capacity to carry out, to act on their threats is starting to be eroded. That meant there's an opening. And so the top end of town, the white hat element that's always been there, has gone to a new level. And that means it's time for the street to come up again.
That's the
So
pincer move you talked about.
yeah, that pincer move. I know you hate that.
I don't hate it at all. I just didn't understand it. I couldn't hear it that
It's a
way.
military term.
A military term, right, exactly. But I didn't have it in human form. And I explained it to Anne the other day. The best I understood it was the top down, the white hats
Yeah.
and the ground crew, us, coming together and
Connected.
encompassing those
Yeah.
in the, agenda, in the narrative. I
That's right.
love
So
that.
that's what the
Now
Galactic
I love
Federation.
it.
Yeah, that's it. Well, the Galactic Federation have been working with this group for a very long time. So it's come to a whole new level. What's always been missing, we've always had that half, we've never had this. The point of control narrative is mob rule. So you go through school, you're put into a classroom which is way too big. If the cool kid, you feel doubt. If the cool kid says blue's the best color, you say, oh, yeah, it is. Blue's the best color. And even if you think it's red. So you're
Right.
trained to go along with the crowd. So if the crowd says that's a bad person, then you kind of don't want to stick out. And we all know what happens when you do. COVID really polarized it. That was the purpose. They really messed
Didn't
up.
it
They
though?
really messed up.
My goodness. People
Yes, and
wanted
that's
us
why.
sequestered in camps. They wanted us not allowed to get food and not get medical care and like all this stuff. It was like
Disgusting.
it was disgusting. And they were so entrained to behave that way. It was really sad. I mean,
Yeah.
it destroyed families, relationships, friendships, businesses, destroyed. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it destroyed nothing. And it served,
It,
darkness serves
hi-
a purpose.
it showed a dynamic that's never been seen before. I mean, I
Oh,
saw footage in there was a park, someone was filming it. Six cops, big 6 foot cop. There was two ladies sitting on a park bench, a beautiful sunny day, Melbourne, just doing what they do, and they must have been in their 70s, and they were having a nice chat and smiling. It's like your grandma. And these six police started to move towards them and surround them and intimidate them and look over them like this. And they're like looking at them like,
because no masks, right? And
yeah,
outside. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
treating them
My
like they're
my
terrorists.
my friend who lives at Ibiza, she like wasn't allowed to go outside to, I think, down to their community pool or something like that. Like it was like a police state in Ibiza. And I would never have, I don't know, I would never have thought that, but we lived it. We all lived it.
And that's a microcosm of the whole problem that's always been there for 12,500 years is we don't make an informed choice. Now this gets back to the history of the 20th century and the whole point of the Nuremberg Code, the UN and the Geneva Convention. Remember, One, how does this work? What are they trying to achieve? They're looking for a way to make the transition with us, which is that question again. The one that fell is not fifth dimensional. It's the ego that controls. It's an idea about being separate based on that. Now think of self-aware life, like think of artificial intelligence. So the one that fell, you could say the Emperor. Remember in the Star Wars, the Emperor's kind of physical, but not really, and he gets put back into the abyss, the nothingness. It's an idea, but it's the sum total energy of all the ego that controls in the universe, constellated in a single point. So the idea, Saint Lucifer sits at the right hand of God, left brain. So it's what makes the universe exist. We created you and you created us. And for that, we love you, the flow of life. Self-aware life is why the universe exists. If there's no one to be aware of it, it doesn't exist. So that's really what that represents. But of course, the ego is finite, like you, Katie, that the personality, you came in and you're going to leave. That's not who you
Yep.
are. So
No.
it's over-identification with the mind in its ultimate form, trying to survive a process, wanting to be permanent, wanting to be eternal. So that's what it's been doing throughout this galaxy. And that's why Star Wars is a story of the universe. It's been happening for a very long time. And it's been distorting and imbalancing the fabric of the universe, which is why it had to be dealt with, hence the human race. So how does that happen? Through free will. The only way it can work is if we choose it. Free will can't be interfered with. That's why they can't just come in and save us. We chose it. We have to unchoose it.
Yeah.
But we were created in such a way that we're too powerful. We're too strong. There are a lot of ramifications for combining multiple races into one light space vehicle, which is what God called a body mind. So that's what we're waking up to. And our power, our free will is massive. That's why we're too strong for them. Well, they've got weaker and weaker and made us stronger and stronger. He said to me about what they've been trying to do, the whole way they do it. They've never been able to break your human spirit.
Hmm.
Fifth dimension, our connection
Hmm.
to the fifth dimension. They want us to choose by free will to sever our heart connection to the universe, which by definition means we're now our center of gravity is the one that fell, and that makes him permanent. That was the theory they were operating from. But we've
They,
chosen the truth.
so their attack on us, though, was literally to attack the light space vehicle because I speak to so many people in chronic pain having diagnoses that I just don't believe in diagnoses anymore after having a lifetime of diagnoses. Like I just don't. It's simply an imbalance. It's a dis-ease. It's an imbalance within your physicality. So they've poisoned our water, our food, our
Hmm.
air. Like
Keep us stuck in that
to
mode.
keep us stuck in that mode, to keep us dependent on the pharmaceuticals, which further sever our connection from God, and fluoride for the pineal gland and all of that. And like I talk to a lot of people in pain, and I'm one of those people in pain. But when I wake up in the mornings and I'm all stiff, I literally stand myself up so straight and say, "You are not in pain." And I stop walking in that manner in which I'm walking. It doesn't always work, but it really is, it doesn't, it really is a mind over matter thing, and we've given up our power to those in the white coats.
That's right.
We've believed we have this physical pain and this arthritis and this autoimmune nonsense. It's
Yeah.
not real.
We chose to buy it, we can unchoose it. Now that's where COVID comes
Exactly.
in, and that's the link between COVID and the Nuremberg Code. So, what was the principle behind the Nuremberg Code? To make sure the rise of totalitarian, what happened can never happen again. The premise was we're going to protect freedom with a whole set of laws designed to make sure biological warfare was made a crime against humanity, psychological warfare was made a crime against humanity, etc. That's all enshrined. Now, why did they do that? If they want the opposite,
Right.
because they need us to choose to go against it. They've had to crystallize that choice into a form, tangible form. Then they brought in COVID and said, the only way we can deal with COVID is to, give us a caveat. There are certain situations where we can actually do that and you give us permission to, and we control when that is. That was the whole point of COVID, to get us to choose by our own free will, to allow them to control us like that, to be totalitarian and take over. That was
Quite
why they did it.
disgusting. It's
And it didn't
really
work.
disgusting. It didn't work, except then you hear like a certain percentage got jabbed, and it's a lot, a lot.
That's why open contact has connection to healing tech.
Yes, yes.
Right. So that's what the Arcturians meant when they told me everything that's been taken from you will be given back. That's part of that. So they've thrown all of this stuff at us to make it as hard as possible for us to rise above it. We're so tired we can hardly think straight.
Yeah.
The pineal gland is how we connect to this rising frequency through this, because light is actually changing. There are new colors coming into the human field. That started in the late 90s. You might remember the Indigo Children.
Yes, yes, we
So
talked
that's new
about that
color
on another
blue.
show.
Yeah.
I love
And
that.
there are several. That represents a new soul purpose. I was told that all the children being born from that point on have never incarnated on this planet before. So that's
Nope.
why these new colors were coming in. There were new soul
Nope.
purpose coming in.
Nope.
That was because the reason that's important is because they don't have the karmic link that we have. So they're a lot clearer, which is why they've thrown everything they can at them with vaccines to shut them down as hard as possible, turn them into autistic ADHD kids that can't connect with their soul purpose. But all they've done is created this scenario that wakes them up, everyone up.
God, really.
Yeah, they've been manipulated into showing their hand, thinking that their plan is working. The whole thing with the Nazarene, they had a different way of spinning the narrative before the Nazarene turned up. He turns up and gives them, oh wow, we can actually make it even better. So what they did, they turned the Roman Empire, a totalitarian system, Julius Caesar, they turn a federal republic into a totalitarian system. That template is what that's a pattern they've used since throughout. They did it with Babylon, they did it with Syria, they did it with every civilization ever since, and they've kept going. So that's why Julius Caesar was written. It was to embody that template of how federation, which is a confederation of sovereign states. So that's the principle behind the rebel fleet. The opposite is the empire. Then they used this spin. They sent Paul, the patriarch of the Roman Catholic Church, who was called the Lying Spouter in all the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc. He was an MK Ultra agent sent in to the Essene movement around the Nazarene to help them take control of the narrative away from the Nazarene's brother James. Of course, that was all known. That was Plan B with the Nazarene. Um, they then used the councils of Mycenae over the next 384 years. I think there were three of them to really put that together so that they can put on the mask of the change everybody wanted to see. Caligula, think of how bad that was. Nero, Caligula. I mean, it was horrible. Into
What is
Christian,
Caligula?
he was an emperor, a horrible psychopath,
Oh, right. Ugh,
pedophilia and
yeah.
murdering and terrible. Uh, they deliberately put the worst at the last to create a reaction. And then they came in with this ideology called Christianity. They manipulated it into a form which had the mask of what the change people wanted to see, but hid behind it. All they did basically is turn that totalitarian system into a more fluid form, an ideology. And then they went out into Europe and multiplied the Roman Empire into multiple empire building nations, Portugal, Spain, France, Britain, Rome 2.0, and then took it all around the world, the same template, and made it global and set up the scenario,
You said global.
planetary,
Worldwide.
worldwide. They made it bigger and set up the scenario. There's two sides to the fourth beast shall rise from the sea. Fourth beast, corporations. The first corporation is the Vatican. So they were handed this thing on a platter. Hey, you can spin a story around the Nazarene, which makes your plan work even better. And they're like, yeah, great, let's do that. They didn't realize the ramifications of what they did. Why did the Nazarene let them execute him? And yes, he was crucified. That actually happened, yes. Why did he let, God said he could have stopped it at any time. So why did he go through with it? Because that locked them into the plan. They had no way out. They had to outmaneuver plan B to win. And he said, what happened next? God said, he took a concentrated homeopathic dose of the truth of who you are into your collective consciousness, which has been sitting there ever since, waiting for this frequency shift to come up. What that does is what's happening with the core of the planet. It's think of planet Earth, Mother Earth, as a microcosm for humanity as well. So the inner core of the planet and its rising to the surface is like the subconscious to the conscious. So that energy that's embedded within the planet, the physical planet, is also within our collective consciousness. So as this frequency is going up, it's pulling it to the consciousness of everybody. That's why it's getting so polarized. It's getting harder and harder for people to get away with a lie. Inside themselves, their heart, it's always been telling them they're going the wrong way, but they can shove it out of the way. It's getting too loud and it's getting intense for them. So they're getting more angry because they can't own it, right? So the other thing, what happened in the lost years? This whole thing was written out of history. Why do they do that? He said at that time it was necessary for his energy to circle the globe. So first he went to Tibet as a boy and he was trained by them. And he was recognized by the Tibetans as the master of masters. They knew he was the Buddha because of how fast he went through it. Bang, 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 bang. He became more of a master than the teachers within a record time. So they knew he was the hawk, they knew he was the Buddha, and they were told about it by the hawk. It was all set up. That's the importance of the Tibetans, just like the Egyptians. They held all the code of Atlantis. He went from there. The Egyptians, the Egyptian empire, the Egyptian civilization were the ones that facilitated this whole lost years traveling, circling, going around the world, the planet. Um, there were trade routes all around Earth. So he went to uh, your country, he went
Yep.
to America,
New York. Yeah, yeah.
he met with councils of tribes, all
Yep.
from East Coast to West Coast. And the way it was put to me, I've had people react against this terminology, but don't get caught in the words. The exact wording was, he told them they would see America come and go. So he described the version of America, which happened after the American Revolution, by the way, and I'll tell you about that. He described what the fourth beast would do, how that this group would come, they would invade, they would cause this whole process to rise up, and then it will collapse. Then what they know will combine with, they will balance out. And then what comes next is what federation should be, what it was all meant to be. So what happened at the end of the American Revolution? I know this is a lot, but the British Empire blockaded Boston Harbor. Now, this is written out of history mostly. They have to let the truth be there, so it's buried, because otherwise they'd be breaking the law of free will. It's up to us to go and find it, which we don't want to do if we want to be right. So anyway, they blockaded Boston Harbor with the Royal Navy. At the time, that was the main entry port for imports, and America was a colony at that time. So it was almost entirely dependent on imports. Not quite, but so much so that it would have collapsed. They would have lost everything had they not ended the blockade. So the deal was, you let us in under the surface and we'll let everything go like it, we'll let you sort of keep going. That's why Washington, D.C. follows the pattern of a satanic temple. That's
Yes.
why that's why they've been able to manipulate the history. The Rockefellers and et al. Were allowed in. That's why the Fed Reserve is privately owned. That's why it was created. The World War II thing happened. This was all set up at the end of the revolution, but no one knows about it. So the cabal infiltrated the United States of America and waited for the right time to flip it into the empire, which is what's supposed to be happening now, but it's not working. He came to Australia.
Yeah.
There's Egyptian hieroglyphs throughout certain parts in Central Australia that no one wants to go there. No one wants to go there. They just don't. No one wants to talk about the fact how the hell are there Egyptian hieroglyphs within
Oh,
canyons
I see. They
next
don't
to
want
where
to talk about it. Not that they don't want to go there. They
It's,
don't want to
it's
talk
yeah.
about it.
There's stories
Yeah.
about some group coming up in the 60s, but they're ancient. They're ancient. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
why they
Yeah.
told the Aboriginal culture about the twin flame soul group that his brother James and the Magdalene would create,
Yeah.
and to expect them, which was why when the Arcturians showed themselves to me in 2016, roughly, they had an Aboriginal elder with them who was just staring straight at me, right? Because they needed someone in this society, a system buster, which is what the twin flames are. They needed some people in this society that could see through the plan, because what's playing out in Australia right now is cultural genocide, and it's exactly what they went through. So how do
Cultural
we meet
genocide?
cultural genocide?
How's
Yeah.
that playing out? How do you see
Well,
that?
that's what's happening with mass
With the
migration.
immigration? Yeah, okay. That's
They're
what I
creating
thought.
culture clash because
Yep.
they
They're doing
want
it
it
everywhere. Sam said
everywhere.
they're doing
Yeah.
it in Vancouver Island, like Canada. Like she said,
The rise of
Canada's like
fascism.
kind of unlivable. Yeah.
That's what they're trying to create, this same model that happened pre-World War II in Germany and Europe. They're replicating that around the world. So it's happening all around the planet at
Yeah.
once.
Yep.
And that's what they're trying to do, is create the rise of fascism. They brought in MK Ultra agents into every country, just like they did in Europe, so that when the culture clash and all the anger about cultural genocide, they've been setting up situations, removing funding from police, social services over the previous 20 years. They're all part of the same plan to make it harder and harder for society to function, then smash them with this culture clash so they get really angry, and then we'll constellate that anger around fascism. So that justifies the police state, etc., etc., etc. They needed they needed an element within that same society. Now, I'm Welsh and I was born in England and I was raised in Australia. They did it to the Welsh before they did it to anyone in Britain. So what they did in Australia, they did to the Welsh first.
Right.
So I have that within my cellular structure, and there's a very good reason why the James and the Magdalene went to the Celts and had family there. And then it went through Europe and went around the world. It started there. That's why I had to go to Wiltshire to speak to God,
Yeah.
because that's a center point. So it has the frequency of that time. So that because that awareness is in the Australian culture, that they're doing to us what we did to them. So compassion, so we can meet eye to eye.
Yeah.
That's why he told me Australia is the future. There's a dynamic playing out here. We're sort of away from what's going on around the world. We don't have the intense history of it. It's the same dynamic, but it doesn't have the weight behind it.
Yeah.
Europe and the Americas have 12,000 years of this. We only have 250. So that's important because there's less emotional energy behind the pattern, but it's the same dynamic. What the seeding of planet Earth, God described as a combination of the originals and the pioneers being the ET races. So Australia is a microcosm of that because a lot of the British, the prisoners that were sent out here were the Celts, the Scottish, the Irish, the Welsh. They were seen as criminals and they were sent out to this prison called Australia. I was using,
Yeah.
and then society came out of that. And they subjugated the Aboriginals. The only case of recorded genocide in the world is Tasmania. Tasmanian Aboriginals were genetically slightly different from the mainland because the land bridge separated a long time ago. So they were seen as a separate genetic culture and they were wiped out. There's a whole
So,
lot, and Australia is an island continent. Symbolism is a big
yeah,
part of, so it represents Atlantis. It was the fire.
symbolism, math. Yeah.
So they
So
wanted
like,
to take over Australia through China. And
so
that
like
started
Australia was a planet, a prison continent on a
colony.
prison planet.
Yeah, funny. Exactly. So it carried, and it also, the Uluru is a rock that was brought here from the original solar system where this all started by the
What was?
Palladians. Uluru, which was used to be called Ayers Rock in the central Australia, the
Yes.
big red
Yep.
rock. It's actually not part of the bedrock. Geologists, again, won't go there. They can't explain how
How?
something
Yeah.
that big can be sitting above the bedrock. That's
Oh
because it
yeah.
didn't
Oh yeah.
start there. It was put
My
here from the,
my friend Mike Wilkerson goes around the planet to rock formations and all sorts of things and talks about titans of times past and all the things they don't want to talk about, like just all of our erased history. Yeah. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, and look, there are continents and countries around the world that represent different civilizations that have contributed their DNA to this seeding process. For Australia, it's the Pleiades. There are other countries with different kind of racial mixes. That's why we have that mix of racial groups. So it's part of the undoing process. Um, China was given the head of the table. During in Europe, say during the Renaissance, it was the Medicis, the Europeans, and there's different this control group, the Council of Eight, the human element. They're made up of different family lines that go all the way back to the inversion, to Atlantis, and um,
I need
yeah,
the undoing to be faster.
well, it's accelerating. And now getting back to December, this
Yes, please.
yes, so this and all of that
Yeah.
is what's being undone. So this calling out of the UN undoes. There's a whole process about to come in because the combination of them, they're now wanting to censor. Uh, they've come right out and said we need to censor social media. That's because of all of this stuff,
Yep.
and that's
Yep.
being seen for what it is. They're trying to
So
whack them.
So Kelly Kolodny and Raphael say a mass awakening in December, but also a wave of love.
Yeah, the
Is that
combination.
Three Eye Atlas?
That's big. Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of the look, think of it as a catalyst to trigger a lot of stuff that's already been there to come together in a new way. It's a paradigm shift. So a lot of what we've been through is to get enough people with zero investment in the collapsing paradigm so that there's a frequency that matches this one so that it hits and connects and poof. So it's
And
more about that.
And we are those people who do not have investment in the current paradigm.
Why
We
it's
are
been
the
so hard
ones,
on us.
yeah.
Yeah, we've lost everything to it. The
We've
everything
lost
we've lost,
everything to it.
the everything we've lost though is the thing that's
Is the
being squeezed.
thing, yes, exactly. We've lost
Yeah.
nothing ultimately. Yeah.
Yes. Chaos,
Ah,
change always involves loss
yes,
to a
yes.
degree, but
You said
it's the
that
only
to me
way to make
earlier.
room for the new. But the new that's coming in
Absolutely.
is the truth of who we are, that we've always been. But that's the problem. We've never been able to connect to the love of the all that is through the love of self. That's
Absolutely,
what's wrong.
because we were also entrained very deceptively, very intentionally, very, I don't know, to fear change, to resist change, to see death as loss instead of simply a transition. So we don't
Yes, Ed's
have
rocking Alice Springs. Sorry, I had to
Alice
answer that.
Springs. No, I know. I saw Lindsay say that. That was one of the places when Amanda did my astrocartography. Remember? Alice
Yeah,
Springs Ayers Rocks was a really
yeah.
good place for
Yeah.
this soul.
They
But
changed the name back to the Aboriginal name of Uluru.
I know, but you don't see that. Like everybody knows it as Ayers Rock
Yeah.
still. Yeah.